It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. We begin in Niger State as Vice President Kashim Shettima yesterday assured the people of Mokwa in Niger State that the federal government will stand by them in the aftermath of the devastating floods that recently swept through the community, leaving a trail of destruction. He promised the affected residents immediate federal government intervention and a renewed commitment to sustainable disaster management policies nationwide. Shettima, who represented President Bola Tinubu, spoke during his visit to the flood-ravaged community, where the federal government donated 2 billion naira and 20 trucks of grain to the affected communities. Addressing residents, the Vice President conveyed President Tinubu's direct commitment to immediate action, announcing that the President has ordered immediate intervention to provide succor to the affected community. Shettima said on arrival in Abuja, he would direct the immediate release of electricity transformers to replace the ones damaged in Mokwa town. Well, also in Nigeria, U.S. billionaire and the chair of the Gates Foundation, Bill Gates, has said that Nigeria's health budget is too small to tackle the health challenges facing the country. He stated that the health budgets will be under incredible pressure, particularly with the aid cuts, adding that there will be less money for health in Nigeria next year than this year. In an interview with journalists yesterday in Lagos, which was a sideline for the first ever goalkeepers event by the Gates Foundation in Nigeria, Bill Gates observed that the low funding for health was part of the reasons Nigeria has the second highest maternal and child mortality rate in the world. Gates noted that the foundation is creating low-cost tools like an ultrasound scanning device that will identify which deliveries are going to be high risk. He stated that the foundation has a very aggressive goal to ensure that children born here in Nigeria have every equal opportunity to a child born in whatever the richest country in the world. Now to election news, as the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, says 16 out of the 19 registered parties are participating in the Anambra state governorship election scheduled for November 8th. According to the Commission, 2 parties, the African Action Congress and the National Rescue Movement, have nominated female candidates, while 6 parties, Accord, All Progressive Congress, Action People's Party, Boot Party, Labour Party, and Zenith Labour Party are fielding female running mates. However, no party has nominated a person with disability as a candidate, while the candidates range between the ages of 36 and 71 years. INEC National Commissioner and Chairman of its Information and Voter Education Committee, Sam Olumekum, explained these in the publication of the final list of candidates and commencement of campaign for the 2025 Anambra State governorship election. He said that in line with the provision of Section 94, subsection 1 of the Electoral Act 2022, political parties are now at liberty to start their electioneering campaigns in public from Wednesday, June 11, 2025, and end at midnight on Thursday, November 16, 2025. Now, lastly, as Nigerians gear up for the Eid el-Kabir celebration, ram traders on Wednesday lamented low patronage, blaming it on the rising cost and economic downturn. The traders said there was a decline in patronage compared to what was applicable last year because of the hike in the price of rams in the market. They added that the cost of sourcing the rams from the northern parts of the country had skyrocketed and contributed to the high cost that they were selling. Well, these are some of the things that we highlight when we discuss how we're faring with regards to countering inflation and how it affects people's livelihoods in their homes.
No, the ram cost is a big problem. In fact, I've seen some reports that said it's increased over 50%. They say an average ram was about 300K last year, 300,000 naira, and this year it's well over 500,000 naira. So that's to show the soaring inflation. And I think the statistics brought out by the NBS does not do justice to the level of inflation in this country. It is way more. The felt inflation, so there's something called the felt inflation. The felt inflation is way more than the 20-something% they're reporting, and it's really hurting all of us. Secondly, Vice President Shettima going to visit the victims of Mokwa flood, which is good. Apart from the 2 billion donation and the 20 trucks of grain, the question is, what are we doing when all of this happens as regards fixing the problem, which was poor drainage system, like the Minister of Water Resources had said itself? So what are we doing as regards that? And I will still want President Tinubu to visit. It shows bad optics that many days after such a big national disaster, that over 1,000 people are still missing, over 200 people declared dead, bodies are decaying. It's so painful that they are bringing out decaying bodies from this disaster, and the president has not visited. And for those that might defend and say, oh, the vice president has gone there, there's no need for it, I'll tell you a quick story this morning. Such a disaster happened many years ago in America. It was called Hurricane Katrina. President Bush said his argument then was he didn't want to disrupt the rescue operation. That's why he didn't go on time. But when he finally left, his reputation was dented. It was too late. Close aides to President Bush said he never recovered from Hurricane Katrina. President Tinubu, you are the man on the ballot. Your vice president is a co-traveler on the ballot. During elections, you will visit these places. You will go campaign there. If it was good enough for you during the election season to visit all the states and go campaign, why is it in time of distress you cannot be there with them? It's a good one. You're commissioning projects in Lagos, doing your second year anniversary. But the question is, a quick trip to Niger, Mokwa, will not hurt. At least the number of people that voted for you in that state, let them have a feel that you're there with them. Installing transformers, 2 billion in cash, 20 trucks of grains. We'll go somewhere, some place as regards fixing the problem, but it's not going to solve the problem. We must now see how we can solve the problem sustainably as regards drainage systems out there in Mokwa. As regards Bill Gates and saying that we don't have enough for healthcare, he's quite correct. Last year, in fact, I think it's even early this year, the Minister of Health, Ali Pate, was talking about the fact that out of the capital project fund disbursed for health, over 200 billion, only 26 billion was given to him. That's about 15% of the total fund. In 2001, African heads of states came together in Abuja, and they had something called the Abuja Declaration, where they say about 15% of their budgetary provisions will be for health. Today, we are not meeting up with that quota. Like Bill Gates says rightly, funders and donors and agencies and NGOs like his will put in their money, but the bulk of the work will have to be done by the government. So if last year's budget, based on what the minister said, we didn't even meet up to 15% of the capital infrastructure spend for health, then where are we going this year? The budget performance has been low, like the Senate President alluded to. So how can we think out of the box? Yes, we'll have partners. But secondly, it's about prioritization of government. And that's why I want President Tinubu to have a check at this budget again. Budget has made allegations of over 11,000 projects. If those projects were said to be consistency projects, which we know there's always been an element of scamming in all this while, because if you go back to an ICPC report at around 2020 or 2021 that raised eyebrows about constituency projects, God only knows what happened to those investigations. Why don't we appropriate money effectively to the healthcare sector and stop this level of over 11,000 projects that cost about 6.9 trillion being padded into the budget? It's about streamlining the budget. I believe, and I submit to you today, that if we appropriately streamline this budget, it can truly be felt by the people. The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is now.
Okay, very quickly. I think that Vice President Shettima going to Niger State to commiserate with the people and the government and the traditional institution in Niger State is a demonstration of clear empathy. It's a demonstration of the fact that the federal government of Nigeria cares. And it's not just about issuing statements, but asking the vice president to be there. And what the federal government has done is to direct that the Minister of State for Agriculture should relocate to Niger State in the meanwhile to provide relief materials, food items, and to be on the ground to personally supervise the reconstruction of 4 bridges that were destroyed by flooding in that particular state. The federal government is also providing 2 billion naira for the reconstruction of houses that were destroyed. Over 500 houses were swept away. Over 5,000 persons were displaced. Over 222 persons died. A lot of people are, missing that, government has not been able to account for. So it was a tragedy of immense proportions. Now, as to the point about the president and all of that, no, that's neither here nor there. Section 5 of the 1999 Constitution vests executive powers in the president, and those executive powers can be executed through the vice president or ministers who are his appointees. In other words, Section 5 talks about delegated authority. The president doesn't have to be everywhere. He can show empathy by sending the vice president. After all, people have been complaining that the vice president of Nigeria had been reduced to condolence visits, had been reduced to issuing obituary notices. But we have also seen, very concrete occasions when he went on, presidential assignments, and this is one of them. And he made it clear when he was there, Vice President Shettima, that is, that he was there as an emissary of the president, and that he has been given direct orders by the president to act swiftly to support the people of Niger State. However, the other side of it is to raise the question about the original cause. The original cause is flooding, torrential rainfall for hours in Niger State, and look at the number of people who were swept away. Look at the number of houses that were destroyed. Is there anything that can be done to prevent this situation? Because the point has been made by some observers that, look, this is not the issue about nature alone. This also, some people have said maybe water was released from a dam, or maybe there was some infrastructural, deficit resulting in this kind of tragedy. And the Nigeria Meteorological Service always warns at the beginning of the year that there will be flooding in low plains, there will be problems, and yet every year we face this tragedy. The worst ones in 2014, in 2016, and also in 2022. And now this incident in Niger State. Even now, the Nigeria Meteorological Agency is warning that 16 states are vulnerable. So is there something that can be done about that in terms of governance? That, for me, is a major editorial point. Now, as for Bill Gates, well, again, congratulations to him, having been honored by the Nigerian government. He was interacting with a set of journalists yesterday. And he made a point that funding for healthcare in Nigeria is too low. We all know that. But what we know is that he singled out Kano State. He singled out Lagos for commendation. And that should be underscored. But at the federal level, the federal government is not doing enough, considering the scale of the problem. And what is the scale of the problem? Nigeria has very high maternal morbidity rate, very high infant mortality rate, has the largest number of children suffering from malnutrition, has a very high deficit in terms of access to healthcare, because primary healthcare in Nigeria, since the days of Olikoye and some Kuti, has not really been developed on a consistent basis. And he's saying that, look, institutions like his, Gates Foundation, will continue to provide support, but that support should not be what developing countries should depend upon. Don't depend on aid. Good governance is important. And this is not the first time that Bill Gates will speak along these lines. After all, he once gave a lecture here in Nigeria where he was talking about accountability, even in the management of aid funds. But he made the point that, look, Gates Foundation will remain committed, will continue to support, but Nigerian leaders themselves should wake up. That's not how he put it, but I think that's exactly what he's saying. They put a lot of money in defense, we don't see results. They put a lot of money in education, we don't see results. They don't put enough money in healthcare funding. A healthy nation is a nation that is likely to progress. If the country is not healthy, if children are sick, mothers are sick, maternal health care is a problem, then there's a crisis. Now, as for Eid al-Adha, Eid al-Kabir, or Ileya, as they call it in Nigeria. Look, as young children, we looked forward to the Eid al-Kabir festival because it was the time to eat free meat. In fact, some families, even Christian families, will be depending on the Muslims. A Christian family could survive on a free meat that have been provided by Muslims for a whole month. And that was why, Muslims used to laugh at Christians. That, okay, when it is Muslim festival, you people will come and collect ram. You will come and collect, meat, fried meat. Then when it is Christmas, you people will be talking of a chicken and a turkey that only you and your family can eat. But the thing for Muslims is that it is a major pillar of the, festival, that Eid al-Adha, after the example, of the Prophet and, what happened in the Quran. However, inflation, they say is 23.7%. It's more than that. Because of the pandemic of empty pockets, people no longer cannot celebrate the Ileya festival. Now, there's also a saying in Yoruba that if you cannot buy ram during Salah, it means that your knife has missed the ground. And it's a thing of pride for many Muslims, but pride now can no longer apply in the last 2 years or so, because a ram, in fact, at a time in this country, used to be less than 50,000 naira. Used to be less than 100,000 naira. Now I hear that to buy a ram is 500,000, is 1 million. Ram, we can't even eat meat again. So an average family that cannot celebrate Salah, an average family that cannot pay rent, because landlords have become Shylocks, that cannot even feed properly in this country. This is the challenge that the people are facing. Poverty. One of the problems that Mr. Bill Gates says should be addressed. There's worsening poverty in the country, and it is during this Eid al-Kabir that people will feel it. Now, ordinarily, even as a Christian, by this time, in times past, at least about 5-6 persons will have given me rams. For some years now, I don't see any ram. Even the ones that are magnanimous, that will say, okay, let's send ram to Ruben Abaji. When you see the ram will look like it's suffering from kwashiorkor. But in times past, they used to be very robust rams. So that, because the Eid al-Kabir festival is a joyous festival for everybody to enjoy. We are no longer enjoying. The people who were even that kwashiorkor ram, don't let them forget this year. If they send to me, I will accept it in good faith. I raise my case.
The ram is also feeling the impact of the economy, Dr. Abati. Well, we do wish a wonderful celebration to all of our Muslim faithful as we prepare for the holiday that's coming up. And we simply have to make the most of what we can in this season, and I suppose it's a time for us to place value on other things beyond material things, love, joy, peace, celebration, all of the values that come with religion. But I want to take the conversation back to Niger State, because as both Rufai and Dr. Abati have already illustrated, there are multiple factors involved in this. I became curious about the historical antecedent of how we got here, because this type of calamity, especially in its recurring nature, is not something that usually happens overnight. This shows you some sort of a systemic failure over a period of time. Well, some trace it back to the 1980s when a farming scheme called the Taungia farming scheme was introduced, which allowed people to start going into the forests and using the forests to cultivate their land for farming. And this marks the beginning of deforestation in Niger State. Deforestation, they're claiming, is one of the major issues that has led us to where we are now. As much as now you find that the deforestation is not so much for those who want to cultivate farmlands, but it's because there's now a spike in the desire and the need for charcoal. Why are people buying charcoal? Because we can't afford cooking gas anymore. So it has become a lucrative trade, especially in the Mokwa Forest Reserve, to cut down the trees and prepare them for charcoal for trade. Now, what happens in this instance? Well, climatologists will explain this best. However, this leads to very severe climate change because of the rate and the scale of which it's happening at. They say that in 2022, Niger State lost 76 hectares of tree coverage. Just in January 2024, there were 334 deforestation alerts. So poverty, disenfranchisement leads people into these forests to go and to cut down the trees so that they can use them to make a living. That's number one factor that we need to address. The second factor that we need to address is the ecological fund. Where is it? Has it been dispersed? What has the allocation been? What was received and how much has been spent? Because this ecological fund over the years is supposed to have been used to address some of these issues. Now, if you look at the history of ecological fund in Niger State, you see that it's generally mired in controversy. 2 billion went missing around 2017. EFCC said the governor at the time used it, he redirected it for campaign funds. He was indicted by the EFCC. Over the years, you look at various controversies and scandals around the ecological fund that is supposed to be poured into the various communities of Niger State to avert this type of disaster. But that's not happening. Now let's look at the current governor, who in 2023 disbanded the Forest Guard. Now this Forest Guard had been instituted by his predecessor as a way to avert people from coming in and cutting down trees and so forth. And it's reported to have been relatively successful. However, it was disbanded in 2023, and that now saw another resurgence of the deforestation activities for the sale of charcoal. So we now ask Governor Farmer Bago, what was his plan when he did this? Similarly, in December of 2024, he received $10 million from the World Bank, which was again for disaster funds, for the mitigation of disasters such as this. It was to address the erosion that's happening in the Mokwa Gully as a result of deforestation. Now, I know December 2024, when you're dealing with organizations like the World Bank, might be a short window to say that the $10 million has been dispersed. And of course, it all doesn't get dispersed at once. But the question is, by now, surely we should have seen some tranches coming in. There should have been contractors on the ground so that we can see some sort of progress in work that's happening. But we haven't seen that. It is reported that last year, Niger State spent $2.2 billion on these farm erosion activities. On disaster, to divert disasters based on caused by erosion. Well, they say some roads were built and so forth, but the question is this money going to where it's supposed to go? Where is the money that is supposed to be used for all of these issues? It's not enough for us to be reactive and show up with 2 billion naira and some grain and say, this is sorry. This is our way of saying sorry and rebuilding the community. It's more important for us to be proactive, especially because this is a perennial issue that we've seen happening over the years. By now, a solution should have been found. However, I want to celebrate some of the communities, especially a community in Rabba, where I saw some videos where the young people have taken it upon themselves to start rebuilding one of their bridges with wood. So for me, I thought that was fantastic. And very quickly before we go, of course, as Women's Ministry, I do have to celebrate those 8 women, 2 of which are candidates, 6 of which are running mates in the Anambra state election, especially as we see progress with House Bill 1349, which is a special seat bill, which seeks to legislate reserved seats for women in the National Assembly. So congratulations to the women. Let's continue to tarry on. We will break that glass ceiling.